Hey everybody, welcome back to Markets for Millennials. And for today's video, what I'd like to do is talk about Bitcoin and GBTC. And pretty amazing day, honestly, on GBTC. If I go to my daily chart, you'll see here that GBTC was up 24.27%. Just a massive move to the upside. On Twitter, I had said that I said last night that if the price action was going to hold up through the close of today's New York session, the New York Stock Exchange session, then GBTC would be up at least 20%, if not greater than 20%, and it was. Will this gain last? That's the question, at least for GBTC. And the reason why is because we have to take a look at Bitcoin, and that's really been the real story. So what I did on this chart, if you look real close, is on the bottom left of my screen. If you look at where my crosshairs are and where the mouse is, I've circled a candle on the 2-hour chart. That candle is the beginning, basically the first candle on the 2-hour chart from the close of markets on Friday, the close of the New York Stock Exchange on Friday. That's 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time. And so what you see here is if we calculate where we're at now, put my magnet on here. If we start from the open of this candle to now, we've increased we've had a over 14% increase in total. But if you go to the last candle of where we had market hours open, so if I go from Friday close to Monday close, that's a 22.16% increase. Now GBTC is going to track Bitcoin pretty closely for the most part, and I've said that from the very beginning. If you go and you take a look at Bitcoin's performance. If we go back to, I've done plenty of videos on this. If you go back to the previous cycle and you start at the halving and you do a comparison and compare Bitcoin to GBTC, I mean, you can just kind of see that for the most part, GBTC is underperforming, but in these particular sections of the chart right here, and then at the peak, you actually see GBTC outperforming Bitcoin. And but generally, if you measure from the halving to the peak, there is essentially, it's virtually the same, down to almost exactly the 1/10% of an increase gain from the halving to the peak, Bitcoin versus GBTC. So you see a lot of similarity there, right? And so I wanted to just point that out because as I continue to talk through what we're looking at here, what's transpired today, essentially what I'm saying is you should expect that tomorrow, unless if you look up in the top right here, we're actually only looking at being about just under 17,000 or $1,700 up right now. Obviously, Bitcoin never closes really, so this has been kind of dancing around quite a bit, even just while I've been recording here. But the real story here was that Bitcoin at one time was trading up to about 40,500 or so, and that's just insane, right? From Friday's close, let alone from the bottom. If you go from our bottom back in the July 20th to the peak, just the high that we had today, that's almost a 40% gain in less than a week. And so it's really amazing. But the reason I said you should expect a down day on GBTC tomorrow is unless Bitcoin can retrace before market open tomorrow to about that level where where we closed New York Stock Exchange today, then you should expect that GBTC will be down because of the way it tracks. Okay, and so ever since the close, we've had a pretty good wick down here on the 2-hour chart. You can see we're down almost 6% from where we closed the New York Stock Exchange on the day, which was again at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just since then, over the last hour and 45 minutes at the time of this recording, we've seen again, a 5.5+% drop. And so what I'm looking for is tomorrow from our close here, if we closed, if tomorrow we open at the same level that we're currently at, then a 5.67% reduction on GBTC since GBTC closed the session today at, what is that? It's down here. It's about 33.79. And so if you go down, 5% or so, a little over, 5.5%, then we're looking at GBTC trading closer to, about 31.50, maybe 31.75 at the open tomorrow. And it really just depends on the price action. Now, why did all of this happen? I put on Twitter, let's see, where were we? Let me go to my 8-hour chart. Actually, let me go to my daily chart because I can show you on the chart where I was looking at this. Right here on the 19th of July, if you go to my Twitter, you'll see that I posted that we would have 2 red down days and that I thought this was going to be the bottom, and then we would have a massive increase. And I talked a little bit about this in my last Bitcoin video, as well as in my weekly update that I posted recently, that I'm looking for by the end of July, where this cross is. I'm looking for Bitcoin to be trading somewhere in this range. And it looks like, we're well on our way. And I also said on my Twitter, I posted that Bitcoin would be up at least 30% from its low, and we're there. So it's pretty amazing, right? If you just again go from our bottom here to where we're at right now, it's 27%. At one time, like I said, we were about 38% from the bottom. And so now the question that's on everyone's mind is what is coming next? First of all, I just want to point out that the size of this wick on the daily chart here tells me, or it suggests to me, very similarly to if we come back to some of these big down days, the memorable May 19th crash down, where we touched about 30,000. You might recall that at one time, what this close was, this was, 23% higher than the low that it made. And so that's pretty amazing. In fact, the wick is longer than the body of this candle, right? So when you see things like that, you could see all these really long wicks on the bottom. And what that typically shows you is that you have short sellers that are getting caught on the wrong side of the trade. And a lot of times these are capitulations. A lot of times it's leverage being liquidated. We saw that at various times on the top side as well. And on the way down, part of the reason the price action was so heavy to the downside is because longs were getting liquidated, right? And so these are, what you see a lot down here are these bear traps. That's when you have the long wick, that's usually a bear trap. And so what we have up here is a long green wick, which to me is, it looks like a bull trap. Now, I believe that Bitcoin's bottom was in. I believe that right here was the bottom, and I don't think we're going to go back down to those levels. And it's just so funny. Part of the reason the price action to the downside was so bad was because of the leverage. I've been very vocal about that. I've talked a lot about that on Twitter. People just being very irresponsible, not managing their risk properly, people getting too greedy. And what happens is they over leverage and their liquidation levels are not set responsibly, and they get, they end up having to get liquidated. And so what I think happened here, you can see a couple of levels I have. Let me go to my weekly chart. You can see that one of my levels was the close, the weekly green close of this June 7 candle. So that was kind of the next layer of weekly support that I was looking for, or weekly resistance that I was looking at on the top side. You could see that we had an engulfing weekly candle. It actually engulfed even over the previous weeks, a couple of the previous weeks before that. So that's really bullish. And at the time, at one point, we were even above this level. So now dropping back to go to my 8-hour chart. Um, what this looks like to me is maybe a lot of people were looking at that 39,000 weekly resistance level, and as soon as we cleared it, I just have this suspicion that a lot of people took longs and maybe even started to leverage their long position, because pretty much everybody, even those who are fair weathered and who were super bearish and saying Bitcoin's going to go to 10,000 or 20,000 or 10,000 or to zero or whatever, people who have been bearish all across this, consolidation range, all of a sudden everyone now is an expert. Everyone thinks that they knew what was happening the whole time. And I think because people were convinced that the low is in now and that price is only going to rocket up, that people started taking leverage positions. And like realistically, you can't have, even on Bitcoin, you can't have this kind of price movement without some sort of, uh, you know, without some sort of reflexive snapback, down to the downside. It doesn't mean that it's going to crash or come down to, say, this trend line that you see on my screen. But it's basically like it's unheard of that price doesn't at least come back down towards that level. Okay, and so what I think, I don't even mean to say that everyone was doing it or that a lot of people were doing it, but I do think some might have been starting to take leveraged positions that were irresponsible. Now, this move back in price doesn't surprise me, and I'm actually looking for price to find support maybe somewhere around the 35,000 level. As you can see, we kind of have a couple of instances up here where we were flirting around with that level. You can see it was support back here in this area. So I guess what that means is I'm looking for um, probably worst case scenario in my mind is I'm looking for price to come touch back down towards this area, or at least to touch this trend line perhaps. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen this week, tomorrow, this week, or next week. But I am expecting that we're going to come back down, um, and establish some support, and then we're going to rocket back up. And the reason why I look at it that way, if I go back to, again, my daily chart, I'm going to go way, way back, and I'm going to look at the uh, first halving cycle in the 2013 bull market. And I'll log scale this so it's a little bit easier to see. So what you see here, I'll get rid of these trend lines really quick so that way they're not distracting us from viewing what's going on here. What you see here is you kind of see this last capitulation low mid-cycle. Again, this was a double peak, and you kind of see price come down, and then you have this really quick rise. So if you actually look from the low, up to this high, for example, that's 58%. And so if we count how many days this is, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, before we got this kind of what, again, kind of looks the same like this little bull trap, where you've got this really, like this green candle, but this really long wick to the upside, right? It catches a bunch of people off guard thinking that price is going to go way up, instantly, and it did go up, right? This here was a 3.49% up day. But price, once again, I mean, if you start from just this first green candle, after the low, just to the peak of that was 50% from the open, right? And that's in 5 days, right? It took 6 days for that price action to take place. And that's not really sustainable, even in crypto, even with Bitcoin, right? So you're going to have a snapback. And actually, if then you look at what happens after that, from this peak down, you have what becomes a bear trap, right? But that's 23% down, right? So it's entirely possible. And actually, if you look, that's approximately, I don't know if it's going to be exact, but it's somewhere in the range of like a 50% retrace of the move from this, low to this little peak, right? So you should expect price to come back, to retrace back, because when you have price action like this, I mean, everyone wants it to be super exciting and, like, to turn off my log scale for a second, everyone wants price, to just go like this the whole way without, any sort of rest. But that's not realistic, because even in crypto, price is more likely to kind of go like this, and have some big pullbacks. That's what we've been saying basically for the entire cycle, right? So the point being that, in 6 days we kind of had this price movement, and then we had a couple of days where we kind of moved sideways and came down. And again, because the wick is so much longer than the red candle, this looks like, you know, if you actually think about the Wall Street cheat sheet and what typically happens, you have the blow off top, and then you have the dead cat bounce at the end. And as you come down in price, people think that, oh, we're just going to get another dead cat bounce. So when price came, right, from here to here, people thought, okay, that's just another dead cat bounce. And all, like, look at, the evidence that they had was, look at this, kind of, it's really bad, actually, what I'm doing right here. But you have this kind of resistance line, which it just happened to touch into, and came back down, and people were like, oh, it's going to continue to go down, and it's going to go down to zero, right? But then it ended up establishing support after about a 50% retrace, like after wicking to 50%, probably more like the 618. It established new support and then went to the upside. And if you follow this chart over, other than a little wick down here, which it wicks to that support, right? Whoops. You can see here, it wicks to the support. Let me put a horizontal line here just to show, um, so there you go. It wicks to that, but it never touches it again. Just insane, right? It's crazy. So that's why what I'm looking for is, because it seems to me, even though we didn't in this wave, in this, in this bull cycle, we didn't get a blow off top for the first little peak, it does look more like we're mirroring cycle one in terms of price action. Now that can change, doesn't mean that we're going to, but it kind of looks like we're resembling that. So the way I saw this was that over the course of time, we were going to get, in terms of closing price, we were going to have something along the lines of 30 to 35% up. So this to this little near-term high before, again, this sell down is about 41%. I don't think it's going to be that steep, because so far, like this rally that we're in right now, it's not quite as steep as this cycle, but I do think that, we're gonna get the we're going to kind of have a little bit less than that, but maybe a little bit more than in, the 2017 bull cycle. So I'm expecting that same thing to take place. And so what we just saw, if I can get back over to today, what we just saw in our price action here, again, doesn't surprise me. So let's see if we can do a Fibonacci retracement here. If we kind of start here, and a 0.5 retracement is going to take us maybe to about here, to where this green line is. Let me really quick make a mark at about that level. And so I typically don't use Fibonacci levels, but they've been helpful, like with golden ratio and whatnot. So again, like if you look at where this level is, you can see that we've had support, 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 resistance, at this level. So it would not surprise me at all for price to come down and touch here before taking off again, and or at least wicking to this level. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for on Bitcoin over the next maybe week or two. I think that is going to happen. And then after that, we're kind of off to the races. And it's interesting, too, that the level that I thought we were going to get to, and I think I said this previously, by July 31st is right underneath the most important trend line in crypto, shout out CTM. And So what I think is going to happen is we're going to have a test of this level. We're going to come up, we're going to consolidate, and then bust out, and then we're going to be on our way up. But again, it's important to remember you got to be responsible with your levels. You have to properly manage your risk, and you can't just expect price is just going to go in a straight line that way, right? Price is not going to do that. It's going to be kind of like that potentially even. Okay, so just be prepared for that. Know your levels, do your research, and make wise choices along with that. So then for GBTC, once again, what I think we're going to see is at least for price action here, we're going to see maybe a couple of sideways candles, maybe a couple of red candles, and we might come back down to about here to about the $30 level, and then we're going to take off as Bitcoin moves up. So too will GBTC. And just to kind of revisit what I've talked about before with GBTC, if you kind of look at the previous cycle, and I'll log scale it, it's a little bit easier to see it that way. You can see I've talked about this at length. Go check out my previous videos on GBTC for this. We've basically got this, I just cannot draw today. We've kind of got this sort of stair step pattern. You've got flat, and then a step, flat, and then a step, flat, and then a step, and then the peak. And so you kind of get that staircase pattern, and I would expect more of the same for the most part, except with the caveat that we did not have GBTC during the 2013 bull run. And so because the 2013 bull run on Bitcoin, again, to go back, I feel like I've jumped around a bunch in this chart, I'm sorry. Because price action in that cycle looked, from the low was a lot more constant of a rise. For all we know, GBTC could, let me shrink this down a bit because I want to just show you once again my levels that I'm kind of looking at. GBTC, for all we know, could just come straight up like that. It might not stair step. I've got these levels, you can see on the blue lines, I've got these levels set up as if it's going to staircase. It might not. It really depends. But that's kind of what I'm expecting going forward. Just be aware that, as price kind of solidifies itself, as we kind of try to establish some more support for the move up, just be aware Bitcoin could retrace. It doesn't mean that the sky is falling. It doesn't mean that this was a dead cat bounce. A lot of good things are happening on Bitcoin, and all the narratives, whatever people are saying, everything is lining up. And so that's kind of where things are at. Bitcoin is bullish. Those who have been patient are going to be rewarded for their patience. And so that's where things are at. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you guys next time.